Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Weekend Wrap Up, the news that matters. David Thomas here and with Josh Blevins. Josh, you've had a busy week county-wise.
County-wise, yeah, we had a busy week. Actually, it all happened at the beginning of the week. It was all
Yeah.
first part of the week, but we got plenty to
What
talk
there was
about.
a lot piled on you at the beginning of the week.
Piled on.
Digested it the rest of the week, and we got some really good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, if you're a numbers person like I am, this is going to be a numbers show. So we're going to throw a lot of figures.
These numbers have a little S with a line through them in the front of them too.
These are all dollars. These are dollar numbers.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
So we're going to talk dollars, county dollars.
County dollars today because it was all county meetings.
Right.
So,
and before we do, let's hear a word from our two sponsors, Dennis Young Insurance and Leverage Power Washing. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Get the results you want with the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since 1988.
All righty. Welcome back in here to the Weekend Wrap-Up Show, the news that matters. Josh, tell us what matters this morning.
Well, here's what matters to us anyways, what we're going to talk about. I'm going to do the same thing I did this time last year, which was Monday morning. I was at the Memorial Day celebration on the square. It was Memorial Day, an important day on the calendar every year.
Yeah.
And just like I did last year, I'm going to call out every single elected official in Bedford County because not a one of them showed up for the Memorial Day celebration.
Right.
There was nobody there from our either side of the government in any way, shape, or form was there. There was a few dozen people there, mostly veterans that were up in years. We did have a few younger families and stuff, but I feel like this is more important than we make it every year. And I wish we could somehow get a few more people to show up to this.
Yeah.
So this was, the weather was perfect. We had two speakers. There was a lieutenant colonel and then our friend Paul Engel. Both speeches were really good. It took less than an hour out of your day. I think we ran about 55 minutes, and it was just a really good time, and I think it's something worth remembering every year.
And the weather was good enough. It cleared out.
It didn't rain. It wasn't hot. In past years, it gets, into May, it can be hot and sticky, but it was. I mean, it was like sitting inside. It was, low 70s, a little bit of a breeze.
But Josh, you make me feel bad because I was planning on being there, and something came up where I couldn't be there.
No, and I understand.
But I think what happens is with Memorial Day, Labor Day, even Independence Day, all these holidays we have, they're Mondays a lot of times. 4th of July is not, of course, but those two, Labor Day and Memorial Day, and then we have a Veterans Day, and we have these days set aside so that we can remember this, and everybody ends up saying Happy Memorial Day or Happy 4th of July or Independence Day or whatever it is. And we need to be happy. We need to be happy we live in a country where there were men like this that went and served.
And gave up their life so that we could sit there and grill out on a Monday where we otherwise would be working. So
I made the banner to put up on our Facebook page. And last year I thought, it's not, let's don't say happy. Let's just say honor and remember.
Correct.
And that's kind of what this ceremony was about, honoring and remembering.
Yeah, and it was really good. Yeah. So I'll remind everybody again, it's going to happen the exact same day next year. Oddly enough, it always shows up on Memorial Day. So,
always.
So it'll be right there on the square. So I'd love to see more people next year. As far as meetings this week, everything in my calendar on the happened on Tuesday. So, and it was all in the county. We started Tuesday at 4:15 at the monthly County Financial Management Committee. Got a few updates from that. In the world of construction in the county, Thomas Elementary, we were told, is complete. So the work there is done. And then at Liberty Elementary, they are very close to done. They had a few more things listed that were supposed to happen throughout the month of May and maybe even into June a little bit, and then that was going to be done. And then the next big projects coming up on the books is the surplus building / morgue and the juvenile center. And both of those are progressing. They should be starting in July, and supposedly
Okay.
they came in under budget.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
was going to ask you that, Josh, because I know before, about 3 or 4 months ago, maybe back in October,
Yeah.
we were talking about, this different now. It's going to
Right.
but $1.4 million to vote or
I think
something
it was
like
close to $2 million.
that. Maybe $2
more,
million, yeah. And then that went away because we changed the plans or something.
We changed the plans on the
And
juvenile
then-
center, and now everything is under
Oh,
budget,
it's,
so we're moving
we've
ahead.
saved a
So,
bunch of money.
we're not spending as much money.
Okay.
We're
Oh,
not
okay.
spending
Okay.
as much money. On the financials for the county, currently we're sitting at $1.1 million in additional property tax over last year, and on the sales tax numbers, we're at $1.2 million up from last year. So
Okay.
my napkin math says we're about $2.3 million ahead of where we were the previous year.
Okay,
on money
question
coming
for
in.
you on the property tax. Is this
Yeah.
from increase in property tax amounts or increased numbers?
These
of
will be
people?
increased number of properties, or the only way because we're not in a reappraisal year, the only way it goes up is either something new got built
Additions.
or you did an addition to an existing property and the value went up. So
Okay.
yeah, these are new properties or new additions. And then sales tax is just people spent more money in the county this year.
So that's 2.3 on these two,
yeah,
which that would be equivalent. I think that each penny on our tax is about 220.
135 in the upcoming year is a penny.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, 135.
Okay,
So
I don't know where I got that
135,000.
number. So okay, so
Yeah.
we're up. So I don't expect to see a property tax increase, Josh.
I don't think so. We'll talk about that in a
Okay.
minute, though. Debt service, which we're going to get into a lot today. Year to date, we brought in $16.8 million into that account. Our total debt expenses for the year are going to be 13.7. Again, a little napkin math tells me based on our trends, we're going to end up with over 20 million going into that account this
Okay.
year. So we'll be about a $6 million surplus.
All
again
right,
on that
here's
this
the
year.
thing that I think hardly anybody in the county understands. Josh, how much money do we have in this debt services account?
The balance as of the last quarterly report was $60 million, and it's obviously gone up since then.
Okay,
since we
and
did
we're
that.
earning how much interest on that per month, roughly?
We bring in a little over $500,000 a month in interest, and that's not just on that account. That's on all our accounts because we have sweep accounts on all our bank accounts now. So we're a lot of them. So yes, over $500,000
For this account.
It all goes into this account. Yeah, it all feeds into.
Okay,
this
all
account.
this interest money goes
All
into
goes
this
debt
account,
service,
and
yeah.
then we put a percentage of our property taxes and sales taxes also go in this.
Big
So this
chunk of
is
sales tax goes into this account. A small amount of property tax goes in.
okay, and some of it's required. We have to do that, right?
We have to have enough going in to meet our debt payments, which, as we just said, was
Is
$13.7 million
Okay,
this year.
so
Yeah.
we've got that. All right, so how much money do we have to have in this debt services account, Josh? Do you have any idea, or is there anybody that knows that?
I don't know what the floor number is. Now we're going to get to it in a little bit. We found a new way to spend it, which we're going to do in next year's
Oh,
budget, but we'll get there in a
okay.
second.
All right.
So we got a lot to say about debt service today. Just another side note, E911, it's actually coming up on the next commission agenda. We're going to do a intergovernmental agreement between the E911 system and the county. E911 actually sits separate of the county budget. It's half funded by the fee that appears on your phone bills.
Right.
And they are about to build a new building. And because they're such a small entity by themselves, if they have the county borrow the money for them, they can get a much better interest rate the county can. So they're going to sign an agreement. The county is going to borrow $5 million, give it to them, but it's going to be paid back by the E911
$5
system.
million.
Yeah, $5 million. So
That's a pretty good sized building for but I guess they
I've
have a
seen the
lot of
plans.
equipment.
Well, it's a lot of equipment, and it has to be hardened it's got to be a
Right.
tornado shelter.
Right.
It's got to, they have to be able to keep running.
How
you know,
big
no
of a
matter.
building is this going to be, roughly?
I don't know off the top of my head. I've seen the plan, but
What's
I
the
don't
location?
remember. It
You
is
know?
going across from city animal control on Industrial Drive
Okay,
over
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So they bought a few acres over there. So they already own the property. The E911 does. So, so that was it at just the general finance meeting. Now we immediately fed from that into a county budget workshop, which that's going to be a lot of our discussion today. So we got our first. We thought we would have the the binder, but the binders weren't ready. So they gave us this nifty packet of information here, which gives us just kind of a general overview of what they're hoping to do in the county. Now, this is not final. This hasn't been voted on. This is what
It's going to be
I would say
talked about.
what they in the city side we call this is what staff has brought to
Right.
the county commission
Right.
and said this is what we'd like to do, give us your feedback and vote, and this is the direction we're headed. So in the general fund, they're going to give just 3% cost of living raises to all county employees. That's going to cost about $700,000 additional dollars. They're going to give them their step raises, which is another $240,000. A couple other items I just want to point out because I know you're always excited about the courthouse. They're going to renovate the bell tower where they put the new lights at, so the bell tower looks nice. So that's coming out of that restricted fund that's only for courthouse repairs.
Which restricted fund is that? That was COVID money, right?
No. That's the one where it's a portion of, I think it's traffic citations or court costs or something. There's a chunk of money that comes from court costs that goes into that. So,
well, I know the clock needs a little work on it.
Yeah, I think so. So they're going to work on it. It's all lit up nice, so now they need to make it look pretty. So, and then there's just a whole page of just normal little stuff, increases in postage, property assessors doing property assessments. They need more stuff. So a lot of stuff we're not going to go into. Big dollars, though. The sheriff's department, they have found a way to fund $718,481, very specific amount, for 12 new vehicles for the sheriff's department, which by my math, that's about $60,000 a vehicle. There's a $300,000 increase in disposal fees for solid waste. We've talked about that a lot. It just costs more.
We knew it was coming.
We knew that was coming. And then, again, they listed this out. This has been in there a couple of years. There's $100,000 for elderly, low-income property tax relief. So
I'd say the best relief, Josh, would be the freeze that other counties are doing.
Yeah, just
don't go up on the 65-year-old
65
plus.
years old. Yeah.
And that's basically your average retirement age. That's your Medicare age. That's when most people start living on fixed incomes.
Right.
I think that's something this county needs to look at because there's several counties. I mean, probably 2/3 of the counties in the state of Tennessee are doing it.
I don't know the number, but there are a large number of counties that, it is allowed in the state. You're allowed to set a income figure and a asset figure. As long as they meet that, then they don't increase the property taxes the rest of their life. Yeah. So, and I think that's a good idea. Capital Projects Fund, which is that's a smaller fund. It just gets 3.5 cents of property tax revenue. But in there, that's how they're paying for part of those sheriff's cars, $492,000. And then the remainder of that is a bunch of ARP money still, which involves broadband, waterline project, a TDEC grant match, industrial road development project. I think that's over at the industrial park. So not a lot going on in that fund. But let's get to the big one. For years, we have been asking about this debt service fund, which we just talked about.
Right.
It's been, as long as I've been following this budget, it just keeps going up and up and up, and we keep funneling property tax money into it. And actually, I believe it was 2 years ago, might have been 2 or 3 years ago, Commissioner Maddox worked with me, and we brought an amendment to the floor that actually got a vote because we could see what was going on here, which is we're funneling property tax into this that we don't need to pay our bills.
Right.
We're just building the balance. So we said, wouldn't it be better off if we left that money in taxpayers' hands?
Right.
I'd rather taxpayers have that money to spend in what way they can rather than the government just be using it to build interest.
Well, this is like a county's pot of gold.
Yeah. So that got shot down. It only got 4 votes. I'm not sure.
4 votes.
4 votes.
Really?
It got 4 whole votes.
I thought it got more than that.
No,
My goodness.
it got 4
Why
whole
would you be
votes,
against
so.
that?
Well, we were very early on into the local politics, and we didn't realize we were young and naive and thought you just bring things out on the floor and people will have enough discussion and vote on them.
Right.
And the way it really works is all these people talk before the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody talks to everybody. So they needed to have a heads up ahead of time so they could wrap their heads around it.
Okay.
So nobody had a heads up ahead of time.
Not enough side meetings.
There wasn't enough side meetings. It only got 4 votes. It was not a bad idea. It's still, I still stand by the idea. I think it was a good idea. But in the interim, so this fund has built up. As we said, we're sitting at over $60 million. And we've been told over and over again that we can only use this money to pay down bonds, and debt at the county level. So either a principal or an interest payment on debt. But lo and behold, about a month ago, we found out somebody had a conversation with the comptroller, and they said, "Oh, you've got more money going in there than you need to pay your debts. You could do some fund transfers out of there into a capital account and start paying for some of your capital expenses."
Right.
So just last month, they moved just a small amount, $260,000 out of that account to pay for the new morgue that was necessary. And that transaction went through without a hitch. So they said, they gave us this new sheet this time. Well, we got a whole list of things. You know, we got this money sitting here. Let's start buying stuff. So we're actually, the proposal is, this hasn't been voted on, they're going to transfer $6 million out of the debt service fund. And let me say this, I don't think it's going to come out of that fund balance. Let me give you the wording. This is a transfer from debt service to county capital project fund from additional interest earned. And in the school's case, it's from additional sales tax revenue. So this is that over and above money that's coming in next year. Instead of just having it go into the fund balance, they're actually going to spend it on capital expenditures. So to the amount of $6 million, $2 million for county projects, $4 million for school projects. On the county side of things, the additional money they needed for the sheriff's cars, they couldn't quite get to that bigger dollar amount from their smaller capital fund. So they threw another additional $226,000 at sheriff's vehicles, $100,000 for TAC and radios for EMA, $17,200 for TAC and radios for the fire department. And then here's the big one. At the meeting that we had with the department heads last month, just kind of a side note was mentioned by our fire chief that our heavy rescue truck is getting a little old and he's going to start looking for grants and whatnot, but he's not sure there's going to be any right now. Federal grants have kind of died up. So we're going to spend $1.35 million on a rescue truck and what they're also calling fire projects. So that's a big expensive truck, and we found a route.
How often do we have to use those things, Josh? Do you have any idea?
I don't. Every time, I guess you have a heavy rescue. I think this would be what would go to car accidents and stuff. We have entrapments and whatnot. So it's we were told at that department head meeting, this is about that. They don't have any bids or quotes yet. This is about $1 million truck right now at current rates. So, and then they're also going to get a $70,000 pickup truck just for a fire response. On top of that, other departments we're getting $80,000 for a trash compactor.
What are we going to compact? I thought we were.
This would be at the convenience centers.
Oh, so, I got you one of those compactors. Yeah. Okay.
$75,000 for the jail to put a radio repeater in, and then $90,000 for a truck at animal control. So that add all that up, you get $2 million for the county.
A $90,000 truck
for animal control. Yeah, that'd be probably a 3/4 ton pickup. They can hold one of those. They have those big metal cages in the back of them. You've seen them.
I've seen them.
So yeah, they're nice trucks. On the school side, they found a way. This will be called a path for funding. I bet. Just wait, and we'll hear that this week.
Okay.
For $4 million in school projects. This was the question we had a week or so ago at the school board meeting. They'd mentioned they were going to get new computers,
right,
and they'd found a way to fund them, but they didn't want to tell us how yet. So this was it. This will be discussed probably at the June school board meeting as well. They're going to get $2.27 million out of this debt service account and use it on student computers. $356,000 for the 2 roof projects that were recently discussed at the school board. $300,000 on parking lot repairs, $160,000 on intercoms, $580,000 on heating and cooling type things, $150,000 on floors, $15,000 on fences, $90,000 on doors, $50,000 on bleachers, $25,000 on concrete. So in general, what we're saying is now that we've found a way to spend this money out of debt service, by golly, we're going to spend it. So
I can see roofs, parking lots, all this stuff is maintenance, basically.
Yeah.
All right. The student computers. Let's talk about that just for a second, Josh. I'm not familiar with student computers. I know that there's some counties that probably issue laptops or tablets to students for them to use, and it's $2.27 million. I'm assuming every student will be getting a laptop.
I would think of some kind. Now we'll see, and they did say at the last school board that this will be discussed at the upcoming school board. They've got to decide, do they want to lease computers where they're just paying a yearly fee, and then obviously the company would be responsible for keeping them up to date, new computers. Do they want to go out and buy computers on a couple payments? What are they going to do?
Well,
So they haven't made
here's
that
my
decision.
take on this.
So,
And this is just me. Okay. I honestly think that every student that can ought to have some skin in the game. All right. Because they will turn into Frisbees very quickly.
I'm sure there will be a very strongly worded written agreement that if the computer gets damaged in any way, the parents will be responsible for
That's skin in the game.
Yeah. So,
And it wouldn't be nothing wrong with having a $50 computer fee coming into the front end of this thing too, of some sort. Because if you just start handing this stuff out, you're going to be replacing these things very quickly. And the lease is probably not a bad idea. I don't know.
yeah,
But this is a lot
the
of
math
money.
may work better on the lease. Yeah, my son had one of these all through high school. He was at a private school, but we signed a written agreement at the beginning of the year. They did it. They had an inspection day at the end of the year where they looked at his, and I think 2 or 3 years we got charged. Your charger got damaged fee, $50 at the end of the
Right.
year. Oh, your cable is frayed, $25. So
Right.
they had a pretty strict incoming and outgoing policy.
Okay,
on
so
those
I
to
guess
keep-
the big question is how often will these things have to be replaced and what will be the cost of replacement? This is not just a one-time thing, Josh. Once you start, it's kind of like the rec center out here.
Right.
We build it, they will come and it will pay for itself. There's expense. You build a building, you got to have maintenance. Okay, you got computers that probably are going to go out of date every 18 months or so due to something. There's going to be something, new technology constantly evolving. So this is not a one-time deal.
No, this will be a long term. They got to be thinking
Okay,
long term.
because we can come up with $2.27 million today.
Yeah.
What about next year and the year after and the year after? We're locking ourselves into millions and millions of dollars here for this expenditure. And I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just throwing a possibility out there of let's think about this, that is this going to last 2 years and then we're going to have to do it again? I mean, I see this as a bottomless money pit.
I
if you're not
think
careful.
the thinking would be, and I was involved in any of the discussion, but just my thinking would be, obviously it's 2025. This is the direction education's going. I mean, we're probably behind the curve on this. I bet
I'm
a lot
sure
of
we
school
are.
systems are way ahead of us. So this is a path to get us started that way. And you're right. This isn't a one-time expense. This is going forward. This is going to be the way
So
kids
I'm
will
assuming,
be taught in the
okay,
county.
if
will be
this
way.
would be
Yeah.
replacing other things like textbooks.
At some point, you would hope to save on your physical textbook
Right.
costs.
So
Yeah.
this is where this is costing. It should be saving somewhere else a lot.
Somewhat. Now,
Right.
I'd say in the world of textbooks, even digital textbooks, those don't come for free. There's a yearly subscription fee of some kind connected with those
Yeah.
as well. So, but you would hope that the yearly fee for a digital textbook will be less than buying physical
Right.
textbooks going forward.
So this is coming out of debt service fund.
yeah,
this is-
specifically
that
out
we're
of
talking about
what
this.
we're calling
Right.
additional sales tax revenue. Is
Okay.
is the wording.
So we've got $4 million that's coming out for school projects. All right. Don't get me wrong. I think, and we've had this discussion before, our county does not spend proportionately the same amount that most every other county does.
Right.
Okay. Will this be viewed as an increase there on an annual basis that we're spending more per student and more percentage on school budget versus the 14 or 15%? Is that what the thought is here? You think?
This you could use that possibly as a talking point. The question was asked, does this fall into maintenance of effort, which is a very specific area where if you spend it this year, you
Yep.
have to spend that much
Yep.
next year. And we were told this $4 million will not be applied to maintenance of effort. So the state won't force us to spend the exact same $4 million next year. So,
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm
Yeah.
looking at this and I say we've got a $1.3 million fire truck, rescue
it's about
truck,
$1 million truck, but yeah, with some, I don't know what.
and fire
Yeah.
projects, whatever
Projects,
the other
yeah, they were kind of
projects
vague
are.
on
Okay.
that.
But let's say
Yeah.
$1 million
Yeah.
versus laptops or computers for the students. Boy, I'm sitting here thinking, man, if I had to pick, which would it be? Well, we definitely want safety, okay, for everybody. And we definitely want our kids to have the tools they need to learn. So, I mean, this is tough decision stuff. If you had to pick between the two, we're going for all in, okay?
Yeah, we're not picking. We're going for
We're
all
going
of the
all
above,
in
so,
here.
yeah.
But if you were to have to pick, Josh, and you say, well, wow, we did this last year. Now this next year, we got the truck, but now the computers are going to be $3.5 million to replace 2 years down the road. we better be prepared, Josh, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Well,
The
now-
stuff is going up.
Now there was some decision points that had to be made here, and that will still have to be. And we're going to go into those. Can you play our one clip that we have today? This is Dr. Garrett asking a very good question at this budget hearing, which we're going to work off her question to ask some other questions here in a minute. But let's hear from Dr. Garrett.
I, as a member of this committee, have been asked many times about the 100,000 for the Bedford partnership. Could we talk more about that and be prepared next week? Question to me has been, what is our return on investment on that 100,000? My personal question would be, when they started, is it the intent ever for them to be able to not have to be funded by the county? And I would like to say I support the work of the Community Foundation, and I really would like something to be given to us. What's the difference in the Shelbyville-Bedford partnership as opposed to the Community Foundation? The Community Foundation did the 5K. They give teacher grants, so we benefit extremely from that. But I do think the taxpayers do want to know what is our return on investment. So if we could have something prepared for us next week on that and the difference in the two, and will they ever be an organization that will be self-funding?
Yeah, good questions. And do you want to comment on that? I know the partnership was already working on a presentation or.
Yeah, they'll be here next week.
Yeah, so they'll be here. Is that acceptable next week
Yeah.
for them to, and we'll call them up and let them talk?
Okay, Josh, this topic has come up before.
It has. I'm going to go two completely different directions with this, if I can follow my own train of thought. First one is, so there were questions there asked about the partnership and if they'll ever be able to be self-funding and why we're continuing to fund them.
Right.
In the direction of first discussion here is there's a decisions that have to be made that have been made by staff right now, but that the commission is going to sign off on priority of spending. What is important in this upcoming year's budget? So currently they have $100,000 in for funding for the partnership under nonprofits. But we had a meeting about a month ago where all of these nonprofits, 20 some nonprofits, presented to the county.
Right.
And a number of them asked for either additional funding or in one or two cases, new funding that they weren't getting yet. And the initial decision has been made to not include in the county budget the $58,307 requested by other nonprofits. So we're going to fund the partnership $100,000, but we're not going to fund people like the Tony Rice Center. Came and gave a very strong presentation that they could use some. They've
Right.
not been funded in a couple of years, but they have in the past by the county. Somebody's currently made the decision we're not going to give the Tony Rice Center any money. South Central Human Resource Agency, they asked for just a small increase. Haven of Hope, they asked for some additional money. There was no increase included for them. Our 7 volunteer fire departments, they asked for $2,500 additional dollars each, but currently that's not in the budget. The public library is looking to do an expansion. They're wanting to put I think it's like an outdoor patio area and some stuff. They're looking to get a grant, but part of getting this grant is they need to get local matching funds from local government to show that the local government is committed to the library. And currently, the way the budget's going to be presented, that money's not in there.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Just so everybody, for clarification, is that the Bedford County Public Library or is that
That
the
is
Shelbyville?
Bedford County
Shelbyville.
Public
So it's a
Library.
combination name.
It's a combination.
Okay.
Now, the city has not made that decision either. At our first budget discussion, we discussed going ahead and putting the $10,000 extra in to show that we're committed to the library to hopefully help them get that grant. But the county's going to have to make that same decision, and they'll look at both sides. Soil and Water Conservation Service, they asked for an additional $2,000 that isn't in there. The Senior Citizens Center asked for $3,000. Community Development Center asked for additional $3,000. Tennessee Rehab Center asked for additional $2,600. All of which to say that there's hard choices coming up in this budget. You've got to fund. You've only got so many dollars. You got to pick where they're going.
Well, let's
And the question that was
Okay.
asked there was, are we getting enough return on investment on the partnership to continue giving them their money? Are they more important than the Tony Rice Center or some of these
we
other
got
things?
Project Cardinal. It's what we got.
We did get that.
And
yes.
that's our acid factory. Okay. And now, all right, here's the let's talk about what some of these do. We know what the public library does. Tony Rice Center is a rehab center
It's rehab.
for substance abuse. Haven of Hope is a battered wife shelter. Okay. They
Right.
take care of women that have been abused.
Mhm.
Okay. The Arts Council, it promotes the fine arts.
That's
Okay.
yeah.
Volunteer fire stations, I don't think we have to explain what that is. Okay.
No, and they also got left out of the budget in another area that we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay,
So,
soil and water conservation, senior citizen center. They provide services for our senior citizens.
Right.
All of these are nonprofits. Skills development center for underprivileged people, like adults that are challenged.
yeah, they
They
have some
have-
kind of
right.
challenge. Yeah.
Tennessee Rehab Center, community development center. All these are serving people that need help.
Right.
Okay, versus $100,000 blown out to something we don't know what's done outside of some ribbon cutting. All right, you can't tell me anything that they've done. And at the 5-year start of this, at the start of this, back when it came out, I heard a presentation made that said after 5 years we will be self-funding. That's the project goal. I don't know if you were here for that, Josh.
I missed that.
But
and
I heard that.
I have heard that story. Now let's rewind back to Dr. Yerrick's statement again. I wanted to go one other direction with this, which she mentioned, and this has been part of the thing going on with the partnership all along. They've got all these different arms right now. You've got the partnership, you've got the chamber, and you've got the foundation. We've been looking.
Can we stop just for a second?
Yeah.
Joyce Anderson is making a comment. I think she's confused, and it has to do with what you're saying here.
Okay.
So you're saying the library should get more help than the fire department volunteer? No.
Neither one of
This
them are
has
getting
nothing
funded.
to do with that, Joyce.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is the county Bedford, the Shelbyville-Bedford partnership getting $100,000 when we're cutting off all these other important
Well, we're not
nonprofits.
cutting
Well,
them off. We're just not giving them
not giving them increases that they've asked for.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
sorry.
get
Now go back and
Okay.
start back with Dr. Garrett. I'm sorry.
No, that's
but
okay.
I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. So you've got the partnership, you've got the chamber, and then you've got the foundation. And we keep digging, looking for numbers on all of these financials. Currently, the chamber and the partnership, their last filed 990, which is the tax forms that you
Right.
file as a nonprofit, ended in 2023. So we don't have anything past 2023. But as I was digging this week to do today's show, I came across the fact that the Shelbyville Bedford Community Foundation just recently filed their Form 990 for the year ending June 30th, 2024. So this is the nonprofit. This would be what I guess you would call the charitable arm of the partnership. So, and they've done some great things. We just had the 5K.
Right.
They were over the 5K. They do what is called the teacher grant
Right.
program, where they give direct grants to teachers. And let me give a couple more caveats, because this stuff we're going to say here is probably going to upset some people. But part of what I do is in the nonprofit world. I have a couple nonprofits that I do work for. To run a nonprofit of any size, there's a lot of overhead involved.
Right.
There's a lot of marketing, and I particularly work in the marketing side of things. If you cut your marketing budget, generally it cuts the amount of money coming into a
Right.
nonprofit. So we've actually done some tests on some of the bigger ones I work on. Spending less in a month brings in less revenue.
Right.
That's just the way it works. So, but the foundation, which is put up as the nonprofit arm of the partnership, these are their actual numbers for the year ended June 30th, 2024. They brought in $223,931 in revenue. Of that, $218,000. So the vast majority was listed as contributions, gifts, or grants.
Right.
So this was money given to them as a nonprofit to operate. Their biggest thing that they tout is the teacher grants.
Right.
The amount of teacher grants they paid out in that tax year was $14,000. So they brought in $218,000 in contributions. They paid out $14,000 to teachers. In addition, they paid $52,000 in salaries. and $54,000 in other expenses, which will be their overhead. A couple smaller red flags, not big red flags, but just that stuck out to me, having looked at a lot of these 990s. Just for photography and social media, they spent over $12,000, $12,159. So I gave teachers $14,000, but I spent $12,000 to promote myself. The other one that stuck out just on the listing was they paid for a housing demand study, which we all got a copy of, $3,500, which that was just something to look at housing needs in Bedford County. I'm not sure where that falls in the scheme of the nonprofit. That actually showed, when it came to us, it showed as it came from the partnership itself and not from the nonprofit. Not understanding where that came from. So at the end of the year, one thing that they did do is they built up their cash reserves. They're now sitting at the end of that year, which was June of 2024, they're sitting at almost $150,000 in the bank. So they had more money in there that they could use in the future to give to teachers, but they didn't in that year. So, which gets me back to the fact, you brought in $218,000 in contributions, you only paid out $14 to teachers. They did do a couple additional things. They operated the Shelbyville Bedford Young Professionals, which is a networking group that cost some overhead costs. And they attempted to, I don't know if you remember seeing this in news, they tried to do one of these license plates to support the Duck River. They had a drawing.
Didn't go through, did it?
It didn't. It failed. It actually said in their report it failed. They didn't get the appropriate number of orders. So that whole project cost money but didn't generate anything.
Right.
So, which is to say, I'm trying to get the actual numbers out without giving them too hard of a time. Because I know a nonprofit, it's hard to run. There's a lot of overhead. But if I'm a small guy giving my money and I want to give it to teachers, you might be better served going on to our friend Tina Corley's operation.
Absolutely.
Where they give you a direct list of stuff that teachers need, and just buying teacher supplies, you can be guaranteed that 100% of your money is getting to the teacher versus if you go through a big nonprofit. And this is the same for, you see the meme all the time. What is it? The Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. They always show... They show all these advertisements of these sick, poor dogs, and then they have the little meme that you've seen on Facebook says, "Oh, but by the way, the president of this operation makes whatever million dollars."
That's not to imply that's what's happening here. But
I know there's not. Nobody's being overpaid here. It's just to say that if you want to get a bigger portion of your money going directly to teachers, there's
other ways to do it. All right. So honestly, Josh, right now, I think most people, if you say Shelbyville Bedford Partnership, if they've been paying attention, they wonder why Shelbyville is in the name. Okay, and the city has not been involved for a couple of years now. Yeah. And then you say, well, what is the purpose and what are they actually supposed to be doing and what have they done? It's a hard thing to answer. Okay, and Benji Burris brings up a point, and he's using common sense here. And I say Benji for commissioner here. All right, split up the $100,000 to our local volunteer agencies. Let's help those families that need it. Tony Rice, Haven of Hope, etc. I'm 100% with him. If we're gonna take taxpayer money and give it to nonprofits, it should be something where we know exactly what they're doing. And I don't think anybody can tell me exactly what they're doing any better than what you just laid out here. So $14,000 to some help teachers, and then a lot of expenses to set up an organization.
Yeah. Couple other things that are not currently funded in the budget, and these were ones that were listed as important when we had the discussion about a month ago. The sheriff's office asked for 4 additional road deputies to get them up to, I think it was 5 on patrol at a time. That currently is not sitting in the budget. That was going to be $300,000 pay plus tack and radios plus uniform plus gear. That was going to be expensive, so it's out right now. And then the fire department asked for 6 new firefighters, which put 2 on per shift and got them with enough people per apparatus to get them closer to current standards. Right. And none of that made in the budget as well. And back to our volunteer firefighters, obviously by their name, they're volunteers, but we would like to be able to give them a little something. So the fire department asked, could we make a TCRS, which would be a retirement contribution for volunteers? Could we give them a bonus check at the end of the year? Or could we even just give a property tax credit for a volunteer firefighter if he could prove that he'd worked a certain number of hours through the year? Could we give him a property tax credit? None of that made it into the budget currently. So all of this is just preliminary. This is what's going to be presented These
Okay.
budget books will be going out Monday, we're told, but this is what is supposed to be
Okay,
in there.
not included. These things are not included, but they were requested.
These were requests.
Okay,
that were
so
going
I've got
on,
a question, and this is Benji might be able to answer this because he's closer to it.
Yeah.
Could we get another year out of the fire truck and divert this $1 million for a year,
Okay, now
and then handle some of this?
I know where you're going, but no, and that's part of the catch on that fund. All of these that are not included
Gotta come out
are
of general
recurring yearly
Right.
expenses that you need to be able to fund going forward. So they cannot take any of this out of that debt service account, even with the current accounting maneuver that they've used.
But
to
we
do the
could
transfers.
not.
So,
We could not put as much into it and divert that money to pay for this.
now that would go back to the amendment we tried that got shot
Exactly.
down. You've got a certain number. I think it was 15 cents. I'm not remembering off the top of my head. There's a certain number of pennies of property tax
Right.
that is going into debt service.
Right.
If you were to move some of those pennies over into the general
That's what I'm
fund,
saying, because
maybe you
honestly,
could
and
find some
Benji
funding
can
for some of
attest to this,
this.
I think, and I think most everybody can attest to this. Our greatest assets are people,
right?
and all of these are people.
These
We're
are all
talking
people
about
things
more
that didn't
people
make it.
on patrol, more people for the fire department to get us up to a level we need to be.
Yeah.
That would just seem like to me that would make sense. I don't know, Josh, maybe not.
Well, all of this will be discussed and more this week at the county budget hearings. So we'll hear what they have to say. I don't think I got a lot more on the budget. Let's go to one more thing real quick, which I had to handwrite on here because I almost forgot I went to it. There was a county planning meeting this week. It happened that same day, Tuesday, about 7:00. And the big topic of discussion, again, was the future land use map and the comprehensive plan for Bedford County. This is for all the property outside of city limits of
Right.
our 4 towns here in the county. Last month, it had been presented by our planning director to do a big round loop around the county, and all that outside area be 3 acres minimum per parcel. He gave them a month to chew on it, to think about it, and they came back, and there was enough pushback from members of the planning commission that basically that's not
Okay,
going
so why
anywhere.
was the pushback? You were there, so what was the thought?
Two schools of thought. One being that if you're a landowner, say a farmer or whatever, and you want to pass a piece of your land down to one of your kids, and you don't own a lot of land, you shouldn't be forced to give one of your kids 3 acres. You should be able to just give
Okay,
them
let's
1
make an
acre.
exemption
So-
for that. Okay,
Yeah.
that's easy.
And then the other one, honestly, was if they tried to pass this at 3 acres, that they would get so much pushback from developers and
Oh.
realtors that they would never get it
Oh,
through.
that's
So that was the other
terrible.
discussion.
So it's about developers.
It was partially about developers and partially about farmers.
The
So
farmers deal, that could be exemptions. I mean, you could.
it could be. There's a separate set of standards for major subdivision versus a minor subdivision. If you actually look into what Coffee County did recently, they actually changed theirs to a major subdivision has to be 5 acres
Exactly.
per. In
All right,
Coffee
and I
County.
think
That
the
just
thought
passed.
there is they're
Yeah.
trying to preserve the farmland.
It's about farmland.
and they're trying to put the
preservation.
population center where the population center is, like the town,
Yeah.
the city, expanding the city, annexing on the
Yeah.
city.
So they went a different direction, and this will be back up for discussion again next month. They are going to try. We currently have 2 of what are called overlays. One on 231 North coming into towards Shelbyville from Rutherford County, and then one on 82, which feeds from 231 over to Bell Buckle. On either side of those highways, 1,000 feet on 231, 600 feet on 82, there's a separate set of standards that includes things like you can't have parcels smaller than 3 acres. If you build a structure, it has to be set back further from the road than on a standard road, like double the setbacks. There's material design standards. If you build a structure within 1,000 feet of 231, it's got to be brick. It can't be vinyl. It could also, they do allow, I think, hardy board and stuff, but nicer materials if you're close to one of those highways.
Okay,
So
so you're
just
talking
ways
about,
to protect. So what they're talking about doing is expanding that overlay system to be every major state highway or numbered highway that's in Bedford County. So 231 all the way from the top edge all the way to the south edge would be protected by the overlay. 41A coming all the way in from Eagleville, going all the way towards Tullahoma, both county lines, that would be protected. 64, 82,
64.
yeah, those would all
130,
have.
129.
They didn't mention 130 and 129, so I don't know about those in particular.
All right,
but it was
here-
those bigger ones that they were saying, let's put a
yeah.
600-foot overlay each direction on either side of those roads, so 1,200 feet in total. And that protected area would be higher standards, bigger lot sizes, so you don't get somebody building a subdivision on 231 that has 25 driveways in a row feeding onto 231.
Yeah, that doesn't work good.
Yeah.
But let's think about this one other way, Josh. We have smaller communities out in our county. Let's say Bell Buckle, Ward Trace, Normandy, Unionville, Wheel, Pleasant Grove. We've got these little places that have got a sign up, okay? And it's a little bit more population in those areas. Wouldn't it be wise to look at development and say, if we're going to put a development of a subdivision, wouldn't it be wise to be adjacent or add on to those areas versus just having a random subdivision out in farmland?
Now, there were some separate overlays that we didn't talk about a lot, but he is putting on there. And these were actually, it was around those areas you said, but it was mainly more around our schools. And it would allow subdivisions, more like city type subdivisions like we have here in Shelbyville, around community, around Cascade, around Liberty. If you could build a walkable subdivision that had sidewalks and little stores and whatever, and keep it clustered. So there were some clusters set up out in the county as well.
If you just randomly pick out a huge plot of land and you're going to develop it and put 200 homes in it, you've created a small city. That's what you've done. Okay. So it would be smart, I think, for the planning commission to do just what you're talking about. The school makes more sense.
Yeah.
Normandy makes sense. Longview, Midland, all these places where they're a little bit more concentrated. Find places adjacent to that and expand that versus just random out in the middle of nowhere.
Cornfield somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't look like you've planned when you do stuff like that.
And by default, I mean, you've got to have to throw up 200 houses. You've got to have the infrastructure to do it. So if you're out in the cornfield, you may not be able to anyway.
Right.
So,
and also this presents a problem with our fire department and our sheriff's department when you've just got random stuff popping up. I think a fire department would rather see it more orderly designed and laid out so they know what they've got to deal with and it's easier and they can get fire services to it and our infrastructure works better rather than just random developments.
Yeah, so we'll be keeping an eye on this. This is the discussion at county planning. Nothing seems to move very fast out of county planning. They kind of I've only been to 2 meetings so far, but they just seem to like to talk about it and then move it on to the next month.
Right.
So I think this will be a long time before it gets out of there. But eventually there will be because this is a comprehensive plan, there will be publicly called meetings where they're going to want the public to come in and give their feedback on this plan. I can tell you the city did this a few years ago. I wasn't here, but from what I'm told, the only people that showed up to those meetings were the developers.
Of course.
Nobody in the public seemed to care because they weren't looking at something being built right next to them at the time. They cared after the fact when the plan got enacted. And then, oh my goodness, somebody's building something in my neighborhood I didn't expect. But you need to stay ahead of it on the front end.
That's
and
why
get
we
to
got these
meetings.
council people that sit on the city council, Josh, and these commissioners that sit on the commission. We can go fuss at them.
Yeah, well.
And that's the way it works.
When these meetings get called, we'll publicize them as much as we can. People need to get out and give their input because if not, they may end up with a product that they're not happy with. So,
it's possible.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
With that is all the meetings that I did this week, and I want to talk briefly about what's going on next week, but maybe we could hear from our sponsors.
Yeah, let's take a break and hear from Dennis Young Insurance and Leverage Power Washing.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Get the results you want with the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since 1988.
All righty, welcome back in here to the weekend wrap-up show, the news that matters. Josh, Next week, what you got coming?
Next week, we have more meetings than I can attend. Nobody ever asked me about my schedule. They just schedule these things. So I've actually got conflicting meetings. I won't be able to make it to all of it. Everything's happening Monday and Tuesday. Monday night at 5 o'clock, the city council is getting together to discuss the city budget again. We are still not at a consensus about what we're going to do with the city budget. It currently, as it sits, is upside down. We're spending more money than we're bringing in. There's been obviously a lot of concern with that, a lot of pushback. I believe there was an article, if you look in the Times-Gazette this week, that quoted our vice mayor, and he's been kind of leading the charge of how do we get back to a balanced budget, which is where we need to be. So
every government entity needs to be
a balanced budget. So we're not in Washington, D.C.,
No.
so we got to get to a balanced budget at some point. Appreciate him leading that charge, but there will be starting at 5, and it's scheduled to go from 5 to 7. I don't know how long the discussion will go. It's going to depend on if it goes good or doesn't go good, but we'll be there. It'll be on YouTube. I'll be at that one. Tuesday evening, one I cannot make it to, but I will be watching it later on YouTube. The county at 5:30 is having their second round of county budget hearings. This will be the first meeting where the budget books will actually be in the hand of the county commissioners. So they won't just have this little packet. They'll have the physical budget that they can go through page by page, look at the real numbers, and give feedback to the finance committee and the finance department. Honestly, and I've been to, this is my third year of county budget type stuff. I've never seen, once the county budget gets presented, a lot of changes to it. They've talked about it a lot, but usually it stays pretty much what gets presented is what gets voted on a lot of times.
Okay,
so we'll see how that goes.
Do you think this is going to be bundled like always, the county budget?
Yes,
one big thing.
It will be voted as a bundle. One thing I will be watching for this year, which happened 2 years ago, I believe, no, 3 years ago, at the last minute, the property tax increase that we got, the big one, the 18% one, that happened on the county commission floor the night of the budget vote. It did not come out of the finance committee. The finance committee passed a budget that they obviously don't pass. They recommended a budget. They recommended a tax rate. And then the night of the county commission meeting, a few days before, the mayor had sent out a letter to all the county commissioners and said, hey, we got back a salary study. We feel like our people are underpaid by 30%. So they kind of got that through at the last minute on the floor. Again, we've got in this year's budget some position things like those firefighters and the sheriff's department. It would not shock me even if it gets through finance in its current state, if somebody on the floor at the end of June, when they come to vote on this, doesn't try to push through an amendment to raise property taxes a few pennies to cover these positions.
Can't happen.
So
that can't happen.
It can happen, but it did happen.
I know. If somebody's going to try to pull that shenanigan, they need to divert the funds that are going into the debt services to fund this. Find it that way.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So they're going to have enough meetings that they could take care of this on the front end. They're meeting this week on Tuesday. They're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks from that after the committee meetings to discuss the budget again. And then there'll be a final finance committee meeting, and then there'll be an end of June. So they got a lot of meetings that they could tweak this if there's enough votes to do that. So, and then the thing I will be attending Tuesday night, 6 o'clock, is the regular monthly city council study session, which is why I can't be at the budget meeting. There is nothing super crazy on that agenda. I just got it late Friday afternoon. We do still have the second vote on a couple of those rezonings that have been very controversial. Nothing substantially has changed on those. I expect them to go the same way they did last month, but I also expect that those neighboring property owners are going to one more time want to stand up
and say no.
And express their, how much they don't want those to get through, but I don't see those changing. So, but other than that, on the city side of things, as far as the regular agenda for the month, we're really quiet because everybody's focused on the budget. So, yeah. So,
and before we wind up, Tony Sanders comes in and says, "Spend it like it comes out of your wallet." Boy, that's the best advice.
That is the way to do it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And it does come out of our wallet.
It does.
Paying city
exactly.
Taxes like everybody else in town. So, yeah. So, but other than that, we'll be back here, same place, same time, same channel next week, and we'll be talking about all the news that matters, including all those meetings we just talked
Absolutely.
about.
And with a new sponsor.
With a
Look
possible
for
new
that.
sponsor, I think. Look for that next week. So.